I've spent over a year building and monetizing my main travel blog, in addition to a couple of other blogs that are still within the travel niche. Diversification right now is key, and I wanted to explore new opportunities outside of the travel space. I decided to take a stab at a brand new brand that's completely different from anything I've done so far. I thought I would share why I even decided to create this brand in the first place and why it's so different from what I've previously done. In this video, I'm also going to talk about the process of creating the brand completely from scratch, which platforms I chose to market them on, my results and progress after just 1 month, and what I'm learning so far. This video is very different from the content that I do want to concentrate on, especially on this YouTube channel. The reason why I decided to go ahead and go for it now is because my YouTube channel is still very new. The algorithm is still very confused about my YouTube channel, so I figured now is the best time to go ahead and just experiment, because the algorithm doesn't know quite yet where to shoot my videos to. If I'm gonna do something to shake things up, it might as well be now and not in the middle of when I know what I'm doing with YouTube. I'll talk a little bit about why I even decided to start a different brand when I already have something going on. And to provide some background on that, I did initially start with a travel blog. It is our main travel blog, which is adventuresoface.com. Because of what I learned from how to run and operate and eventually monetize that travel blog, I did decide to create some other travel related blogs. They are a bit more specific. Our Adventures of Ace travel blog is pretty broad, but it does tend to focus on family travel and road trips in Europe, which is what we have the most experience with. So that is the niche that I try to stick with on that blog. The other blogs that I decided to create and operate are also in the travel space. Getting blogs monetized with everything going on right now in the search world with AI has been a success in my book. But I still wanted to see what other options there are, and there are plenty of opportunities to recreate yourself, so why only stick with travel? Although I love travel as a topic, I have to say that it is unfortunately a super saturated space. It is very tough to be unique and have a very particular niche that is going to attract a following. I see a lot of new, not just travel blogs, but Instagram accounts that are trying to tap into this space. I really don't want to be a negative Nancy, but if it were me, I would just feel like it is way too late in the game to do this. I think the days of, oh, my niche is backpacking on a budget or traveling with a kid, that is not specific enough, and there is just so much competition out there. And that's kind of the reason why I don't want to say I've given up on the travel blogs, but if you are going to do a travel related blog or brand, it just needs to be very niche. I also want to emphasize that with our main travel blog, I really was never focused on creating a brand to begin with, which was a big mistake, and I could probably make a video about all the things I learned from travel blogging within the first year. I wasn't focused on creating a brand around the entire product. In the end, I think it's worked out okay because, again, the blog is monetized and the main product is the blog itself. So I am not focused on Instagram or any other social media when it comes to the main travel blog or the other travel blogs for that matter. So diving into this new brand, there were a lot of new aspects for me because I was going to try the exact opposite of what I found success with. I knew that this new brand was not going to be a blog. It is not going to have a standalone website, and it's just going to be a little something different. So the new brand, also, I don't know if brand is the correct word, it's just the term that I've found best encompasses everything that I'm trying to achieve right now, which is build an audience. So I think brand is appropriate in this situation. The new brand is not travel related at all. I guess there's a little bit of travel related aspect to it, but it's not about travel. That is a very different from anything that I've done in the past, anything that I know how to talk about or have experience talking about. In this new direction, I am solely talking about our life abroad here in Italy. This brand focuses on our general move to Italy, our daily life here in Italy, because we are foreigners. Alex and I were originally born in the US. I don't like using the term expat because I believe expat is specifically geared towards people that are working for a company and the company's relocated them to a different country to work for that company, which is not our case. So although I don't like using the term expat, it's just heavily searched for. I talk about the bureaucracy here in Italy, raising a child here in Italy, and also buying property and our home renovation projects. So it's really kind of an inside look into our daily life here in Italy as foreigners. The concept for this brand was actually pretty easy to come up with because it was inspired by real conversations. The topics that I talk about are derived from questions that I would get on a normal basis from people we personally knew, or just people that have maybe heard about our move, acquaintances, but they were all the same questions. If people I knew were asking me the same questions all the time, I figured why not make this information public? I think I was intrigued in exploring the possibility of creating this brand around this topic because it piques curiosity, and people are curious in the end. That's the reason that we get asked these types of questions from our friends and family that live in the US. They want to know what our life is like here in Italy. And sometimes it's just out of sheer curiosity. They want to compare their life to our life. Or maybe they're just vetting what it would be like if they moved to Italy, whether that's for retirement right now or maybe just buying a property here for holiday. So there's a lot of different avenues that I could take the topics in. And I didn't feel constrained to just talking about one thing all the time because, like I said, there's so many subtopics within this genre that I can create content around. And that's another huge benefit when picking out your niche. It needs to be something that has different buckets of subtopics that you can talk about. And this way, you never really run dry of things to talk about. Your content is always circulating and it's fresh. Your content then has the chance to be the same but different. So for example, there's only so many stories I can tell about how we ended up in Italy. There's only one story because that's just what happened. But I do have these different subtopics like raising a kid here and buying a house and what it's like to renovate. And those have 100 stories within themselves. So it really gives you the opportunity to not just get stuck. And that was another challenge that I found with the travel blogs, primarily with our main travel blog, because a lot of that, I would say, 99% of that is based on real life experiences. We aren't full-time travelers, like we do travel a lot compared to the average person, but we're not on the road and we're not living in hotels 365 days out of the year. So at some point, it's going to become tough to write content from real life experience because we maybe aren't traveling at the moment. Compared to my life here in Italy, I am living it every single day, and something interesting may happen every single day, which turns into a story, and it's a story that I can turn into content for this brand. I'm going to start with the different platforms that I currently use and chose to operate this new brand on. And then afterwards, I'm going to go into the actual numbers and the results of my first month on these platforms. I decided to start with Substack. To be honest, I knew nothing about Substack. I did see it from time to time on food-related Instagram accounts, and so I thought it was really good for, and it is really good for recipe-based newsletters. And that's another thing. If this is a platform for a personal blog, or if it's a platform for newsletters. I'm still not really sure what it wants to be known for, but I do know that it is good for long form content and more specifically relatable and personal content. The reason why a lot of blogs don't work is because people kind of treat them like diaries. And no offense, but a lot of people don't search Google for diary entries. They search Google for information. But on Substack, you are kind of allowed to create your own personal space that's more in the form of a diary. At least that's how I approached it. Not literally in the sense that I'm spilling all my secrets into a diary, but it felt like a better fitting space to do long form content that was more relatable and more of an insider approach towards the stories that I want to tell. Since this was my first time ever using Substack, there was a learning curve, of course, but I poked around to other successful Substack publications and I kind of got a sense of what I needed to do in order to be successful. And by successful, I just wanted to start getting some followers, and in Substack world, that means subscribers. So the main benefit of using Substack is that you're actually simultaneously building your email subscriber list. And you probably have heard that is huge right now, because that is a good way to protect yourself from any Google algorithms or any other social media algorithm changes. Having an email list was a huge bonus for me to use Substack. You could spend hours, days, weeks looking through the best practices for Substack. I really tend to not go down the rabbit hole. I get a high level sense of what works and what doesn't. And primarily I do this just by looking at other successful Substack accounts and seeing what works and what doesn't. So obviously I am starting completely at zero here with Substack. I have an idea, I have some topics, I have posts queued up or things that I want to talk about. But remember, I'm starting at completely zero here. This is likely not sustainable, but I wanted to start out strong, and I'll talk a little bit more about that with the other platforms. And the reason wasn't to just, I want followers all at once really quickly. The reason is because I wanted to learn quickly. And the only way that you can start learning about the platform and what you need to do better with your content is with frequency and just volume. That's just the way it is with any sort of set of data. You need volume. I decided to post 16 posts within the first month on Substack, and I will admit that is a lot, but again, I wanted to see what resonates and what doesn't. So the first 3 posts that I published on Substack, it felt like I was writing to a room of rocks. There was nothing really going on. People were not responding. There were a couple of views here and there. Of course, that felt discouraging, but I knew that Substack is still a platform like any other, and it has some sort of algorithm, and it needs to get a sense of what you are posting and who to shoot it out to. And in order to do that, it needs data. I decided to keep publishing, and eventually I think by the 5th or the 6th post, views started to roll in, so did the followers. And that is just primarily because I did segment my topics into I think like 3 or 4 different things that I could talk about, and each of those initial posts on Substack touched on one of those topics. If you know anything about Substack, I also experimented with the notes feature because I read that this could help rapid growth. I don't know, I think that's more of a clickbaity type strategy. I did though, however, post notes maybe a month ago that are still getting traction today, like regular traction every single day. Someone will like it or comment on it. But aside from the first 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks on Substack, I stopped posting a note every day. I didn't feel like it was super beneficial to the overall strategy and growth of the publication. If I do have a really good idea, then I'll pop in there and post a note. But other than that, I do not rely on it as part of a strategy for creating the brand on Substack. I think after a week or 2 on Substack, after I kind of got the hang of things or just the basics down, I got a little curious. I created a secondary publication on my Substack account. If you're familiar with Substack, you can create multiple publications that are about different things. So my main publication is Rootless in Italy, which is again about just our life abroad here in Italy. It has insider stories of our daily life. And I wanted to create a secondary publication that was kind of relevant just to see where it would go. I knew that the secondary publication had to be really easy for me to maintain and operate because I can't run 2 publications at once. I'm not a machine. So the secondary publication is literally just real estate listings of cheap houses here in Italy. I chose this because it's something that I'm genuinely interested in. Sometimes I do it even in my spare time. Like if I'm on my phone, I'm usually not flipping through Instagram, I'm flipping through cheap houses for sale in Italy. So I figured why not just share this with a newsletter audience. Again, based off my personal conversations just with people, I knew that this would be a topic of interest, especially to Americans or people that have no idea what the real estate market is like here in Italy. The concept was very simple. It doesn't take a lot of time for me to put it together, and I just decided to give it a try because at this point I'm only like a week or 2 in to creating this new brand as a whole, so I might as well just try stuff. Even though the secondary publication was completely separate from the brand I was trying to build on Substack, it was still a good way for me to collect emails for a subscription email list. I wanted to think of it as a bonus audience. The next platform that I chose to use is Instagram, which is ironic because with my travel blog, my main travel blog, I really do not focus on Instagram at all. And there's a couple of reasons for this. My main travel blog is kind of an extension of what my personal Instagram used to be like decades ago. It's a mixed audience. It's people that actually know me from real life, and then some people that have followed me for various reasons. I've had different interests in the past. So they might just be like legacy audiences that are following me for completely different reasons. And I feel like there's a very small audience that actually enjoys the travel related content on my main travel blog Instagram page. Yeah, if that's not confusing, that's kind of the reason why I don't want to say given up on it, but it's not a priority. And as I mentioned a little bit before, I just feel like the travel space, especially on Instagram, is so saturated and the competition is so high that your content either has to be like banging good, or you have to have some kind of niche that no one else in the world has. From all that, it was weird for me to decide to use Instagram for this new brand, but I had a completely different mindset about this new brand attached to an Instagram account because again, it was a completely different niche and it's more personal. While many people travel and document their travels, not a lot of foreigners live in Italy and talk about it, especially Americans. I mean, there are a ton, but the competition is much slimmer. And finding an account that's going to post the exact same content about the same subtopics and the same stories as me is very slim compared to finding just another travel Instagram account. So because of this reason, I felt way more confident to use Instagram as a platform for this new brand. Growing on Instagram, that's a whole nother rabbit hole that I did not want to get into. But of course, I knew I had to do some initial research because I've never actually wanted to grow on Instagram. Like that was just never a priority for me. So I really didn't have the knowledge of current Instagram rules and guidelines and the best practices. Like I'm an adopter of Instagram from, again, decades ago, and things have changed drastically. For me to think, okay, how can I grow an Instagram account from zero? That was scary, and I knew that I needed to have some kind of strategy going into this. After doing some research, I found out that the best way to go about creating an Instagram account, again, from 0 followers, 0 views, 0 everything, is with quantity. Yes, that's going to cause burnout in the long run, but in the short run, again, the goal is to just collect data. And in order to collect data, I needed to just have some kind of content out there. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, I am committed to posting 1 reel a day. I think I ended up posting 1 reel a day for 20 days, for the first 20 days, just to test engagement and see what happens. I think the first few days, similar to Substack, was absolute crickets. And that's to be expected because, again, the Instagram algorithm has no idea who this new person is, what they're trying to show. Is this valid information? Is it going to be interesting information to show to anyone? Is it worthy of reach on Instagram? That is what Instagram is trying to figure out. While I'm posting 1 reel a day on Instagram, engagement with other accounts is also really important. When Instagram sees that you are commenting and liking or even sharing other people's content that is related to yours, Instagram sees that as a huge plus because it's community building, it's engagement, it puts you on Instagram's good side. I've been able to find and follow other Instagram accounts that are maybe in a different country. So for example, moms that are American that are now living in Spain or in France. That seems to be different enough, but same enough for Instagram to recognize that I am engaging with their content in a similar field. You might have also read this yourself, but I think when it comes to Instagram and growing on Instagram is that a unique niche is way more powerful than just posting frequently. The last platform that I want to talk about today is Threads. I had 0 expectations, knowledge, really experience with using Threads. I obviously knew what Threads was, but I never really got the hang of it. It wasn't really a quality place to be, it was more about quantity. Knowing all this and still having kind of a negative outlook on it, I decided to experiment anyway because this brand is coming up from absolutely nothing, so what have I got to lose? So similar to the other platforms, Substack and Instagram, I wanted to come in hot And again, this isn't just because, oh, I want all of the success now, I want the audience now. It's because I want to learn now. So I want to learn quickly, and the only way I can do that is if there is content for me to analyze. If I have nothing, then I'm not learning anything. It seemed pretty intuitive that on Threads, frequency is a big thing, so I committed to posting one post on Threads a day. I posted an introduction post on Threads as the first post. I've seen this in the past. It's kind of a way to try and get the algorithm to connect you to people that might be interested in seeing your content. If you post something on Threads that just straight up tells your audience who you are or what you plan to be talking about on your Threads account, then Instagram will get a hint of that and just start spitting it out, I guess, to an audience that they think might be interested. I don't know, I don't work at Threads. I was able to gain a little bit of a follower count just right from the beginning, which was interesting. I think that motivated me to keep posting something at least once a day. The things that I would post on Threads, again, were coming from these subtopics from my overall theme of the brand, which is living abroad in Italy. So sometimes I would post things about what it's like raising a kid. If I have a funny story from something that happened that day, then I'll turn it into a post. The same with like Italian bureaucracy. Honestly, most of the posts on Threads I did not have to think about too hard, because I would just take something that maybe happened to me that day or recently and just turn it into a post for Threads. I also used the strategy of pulling existing content from Substack. So because my Substack posts were long form, I would take just a little snippet of them and turn that into a post for Threads. Overall, the strategy was sustainable because I'm able to repurpose content, and that is absolutely key, because you want to avoid burnout. You want to create a sustainable strategy. Even if you are really gung-ho at the beginning like I am, there still needs to be some kind of overall strategy that you are going to maintain in order to keep all these platforms successful. Okay. Now let's talk about what this all means, because I've maintained this strategy and the platforms for a month. It's a little different based on the platform, and I'll talk about that. But I thought it would be interesting to share what the stats are, what the data is looking like, and definitely what I've learned. So let's start with Substack. I created my first long form Substack post on January 9th. Today, when I'm filming this, it is February 20th. So it's been a little over a month, but Substack is a platform that I chose to focus on first. And so as of now, that's a platform that has the most data. So on Substack, I've posted 16 times, and I'm talking about long form posts, not just notes. And within that time frame, from January 9th to February 20th, I've been able to accumulate 445 subscribers. Gaining that amount of email subscribers in that short amount of time frame, for me personally, was a lot quicker than when I was trying to gain subscribers for my travel related blogs. So I took that as a win. In terms of views on Substack, I have a total of 5,500 views. This is just overall views of the post itself. I don't really know what to make of this views number just yet, but the closest thing that I can relate it to is web traffic views. So if this Substack account or publication was a standalone website or blog, and I got 5,500 views within the last month or so, I would be pretty thrilled, because again, this is a completely new brand. Like, it did not exist on the internet at all before January 9th. You know anything about blogging in general, it just takes time with Google to get out of their sandbox and to be visible to anyone. So the fact that this came out of the gate hot with this many views within the last 30 days or so, I think is pretty good. The secondary Substack publication that I was talking about, in which I post real estate listings from cheap homes in Italy, that I'm treating as separate views because it's a completely different topic than talking about my life abroad. That publication alone received 2,000 views within the last 30 days or so. Pretty good for absolutely coming from nothing. And both of these, I will add, are also continuing to grow. So there has been no just stagnant phase, which is really nice to see. Up next is Instagram. Instagram is all about reach, views, and engagement. I am really happy that it is no longer about a high follower account. And so I just think that not focusing on followers is good for my sanity and just overall not important, I think, to the Instagram growth strategy for me personally. It's nice to have a high follower number, and that is the goal. I want to reiterate that is the goal, because followers ultimately are an audience. But when I look at the stats and the data from the reels that I have published so far, obviously the biggest chunk of views on my content so far is going to come from non-followers. My first post for this Instagram account for this new brand was on January 30th, and again, it's February 20th. So it hasn't even been a month, but I still wanted to share, I guess, what I've experienced so far within that short time frame. So with a little over 300 followers, I was still able to manage to get 65,000 views at this point. I'm pretty happy with this number, considering, again, I posted the very first reel on January 30th. So within 20 or 21 days, I think 65,000 views is pretty good. And obviously this is coming from non-followers. If I only have a little over 300 followers, they're not the ones making up the 65,000 view number. So again, reach is definitely the most important thing, because you want to get your content out in front of new people, especially if this is a completely new brand. You got to start somewhere. You need to build that audience. So with the goal of building an audience in mind, I think that the views number is pretty good, and I'm going to continue posting a reel every day, I think, for the next week or so, and go from there. And the last one that I wanted to share the progress on is Threads. I want to reiterate that I had zero expectations with Threads, but it is the platform that took off the quickest. So I guess that should have been an indicator of how things were going to go, I guess a couple of weeks into it now. I am very surprised, and again, I had no real intention with doing anything impactful with this platform. I figured that it was an extension of Instagram, but I was proven wrong with that assumption, because although they're, the same brand, Instagram owns Threads, just because you may be popular on one or the other doesn't mean that you are going to be just as successful on the other one. On Threads, I currently have 1.3 million views, and then this is, again, January 30th was my very first post on Threads. It's February 20th, and within that short time frame, that's crazy to me. I don't think I've gotten 1 million views on anything. But here's the thing, I have 1.3 million views within that time frame on my Threads account. This doesn't mean that 1.3 million people viewed my account. It means that they viewed my posts. And these views up until this point have gained me 1,767 followers at this time, which is not bad. I'm definitely not complaining. And that is much higher than the Instagram follower count at this point. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is that just because I found success on Threads doesn't mean that it replicated itself onto Instagram. So just because someone follows you on Threads, a lot of the people don't follow you on Instagram. The user pattern and kind of habits are very interesting, because they tend to be very segmented from each other. As part of that 1.3 million views on my Threads account, that has resulted in 42,000 interactions. I think that interactions are likes in addition to replies and reposts. And same thing with Instagram, just because I have all those views, a very, very small percentage of the 1.3 million, I think it's maybe like 11,000, only 11,000 of those views are coming from actual followers of my Threads account. I'm just trying to prove, I guess, to myself, so I can alleviate some pressure, that the follower count is nowhere near as important as the reach itself. One thing with Threads is, while this kind of sticker shock number of over 1 million views is exciting to see, it is definitely quantity over quality when it comes to Threads. In the terms of long-term strategy when growing my brand, I do not want to focus on quantity, I want quality, because I want an audience that trusts me, and I want it to be a more personal space. I did not create this brand to create clickbaity content. That was not the intent. And while that is the strategy and intent for maybe some other brands. I'm not saying that that doesn't work, it definitely does, and these other types of accounts that prioritize quantity over quality are probably well monetized. I do not doubt it. But for me personally, I wanted to create a brand that creates trust and relatability. And because those are the things I value around this brand, I still find that Substack is the best platform for me for what I'm trying to achieve. Although the numbers are not shockingly great, they are good for what they are. And that is long form content, because in the end, I'm trying to build an audience that does trust what I'm saying, and I need to be more vulnerable in order to do so. Because if you want an audience that trusts what you are saying, you have to show and reveal kind of behind the scenes, which is what I'm doing on Substack. I do not tend to do that on Threads, because Threads is a wild place and I do not really want to expose myself on Threads as I do on Substack. Also on Substack, my readers and the views are a bit more committed because they do subscribe, and when they do subscribe, they give up their email. That's vulnerability on their part. If you are just a viewer or user on Threads, you don't have to give your email address to anyone. As for Instagram, I would say Instagram falls somewhere in the middle between Substack and Threads for me in terms of the quality of the audience. Again, all of this is super new to me and I don't really know what to make of it or how to digest it. The numbers are really interesting just for me to see, not necessarily the highs or the lows of them, but just having that data in such a short period of time, I think is really valuable for me personally as I'm trying to figure out what to do with this brand. The question now is, what's next? Do I focus on another platform, or do I try to grow exponentially on one specific platform that I mentioned? I'm not quite sure just yet, but I do know that I really want to add YouTube into the arsenal for this brand in particular. Long form videos on YouTube have a really good opportunity and chance to perform well. However, I have yet to crack that code. I think I've only made 2 videos so far that are related to this new brand. I have a bunch of legacy videos that are travel related, but for this new brand, I think talking to the camera, talking to my audience to extend the brand that I've built on Substack, on Instagram, and on Threads into the YouTube universe. So the goal for me is to really push myself to be more present on YouTube. Obviously, it does take time, and there is a period of adjustment where I need to get more comfortable making videos like this where I'm talking to a camera. The reason why I wanted to create this video and put all this information out there is because I can't be the only one. I'm not the only one. But if you're in a similar position of trying to create a new brand, if you are building something new from absolutely nothing, I hope that this is encouraging, that there can be progress made and you can see results just within the first month like I have. This by all means doesn't mean that I'm super confident about the direction that it's going. Who knows what is going to happen? But what I have personally learned is what works and what I should be doing more of. That's the most I can do at this point, because for some platforms, it hasn't even been a full month. The most I can do right now is learn from what has worked so far and keep doing more of that. If you are also building something new this year, please let me know what platforms maybe I should check out based on what you heard today. If you have an idea for what platform might work really well for my niche, I would really love to hear it. I can geek out about data and strategies all day long, so if you are going through something similar, please leave a note in the comments. I would love to check it out.